Hello and welcome to this 24th edition of the Cricket Web Podcast, a podcast by and for fans of cricket all around the world. My name is Jake, better known on the forums as How's That? And Nitesh can't be with us this week, but we've one-upped him this time because with me is yet another distinguished member of the Cricket Web forums. Please welcome Marco, better known on the forums as Quincy Wagstaff.
Hello everybody, pleased to make my second appearance on this podcast series. I think it was back in October I made my initial appearance.
Yeah, back at the start of the Australian summer. We're near the end of it this time. Neither of us have been watching it, which is when we normally bring you on, because you just play at the wrong time of day. I've been trying to email the chairman of CA that it would be better for them if they play in the daytime, but they keep starting matches at like midnight GMT, so it's really it's inconsiderate, is what it is. Considerate.
Yeah, so I'll pass it on. I'll pass it on to my contacts at Cricket Australia.
But you are doing something about it because the ongoing test match is a day-nighter, which means that it starts at the non-completely horrendous time of about 3:30 in the morning here. So if you get up early enough, you can watch a bit.
Well, yes, and I would say, but we won't go. I'm going to talk about the match itself, but in terms of crowd figures, it's been excellent so far. 3 crowds over 20,000 for the Gabba, which for non-Ashes test matches is basically unprecedented. In fact, I think it's been confirmed that after 3 days it's a record aggregate crowd for a non-Ashes test match. So I think you will be seeing more from Brisbane at least. I think they've found their niche as a test venue.
Fair enough. Unreasonably hot in the daytime anyway, isn't it, in Brisbane? So you may as well be playing at night.
Yes, it's balmy. Yes, it's quite humid. Brisbane consistently. It can be storms quite often in the evening and afternoon, but luckily they've avoided that so far. There may be tomorrow some storms, but that's happens by the by. It's a risk in Brisbane. It's that sort of town. But yeah, that does help. Yeah, and I think maybe audiences appreciate that too, instead of being 7 hours in the sun.
We'll get to the Australia against Pakistan series fairly shortly, but we've got to go over our notice board first. So on the follow-up comments through the previous podcast, it's Bajade is with us. He says, "Top work again. Fully agree with your comments that you're getting better every time." I assume that's the case with everything, right? You know, we just needed more experience, and that helped us become, more mature as cricket podcasters.
Yeah, that would be. I guess you get into a certain rhythm, and you sort of the back and forth between the regular participants, and yeah, I think it just flows better. That's probably with any podcast. I mean, yeah. So
much like cricket is the idea. It's all about going back and going forward, isn't it? So
yes. Yeah. Yes, the banter and discussion.
You just have to find your form. You might have been out of form for a little while, but back in the side.
I was rested. I had to have the pre-Christmas period off, but now the holiday season, I've been brought in as a last resort.
Sergeant says, joking aside, found this one highly entertaining, was laughing out loud during your recap of the Battle of the Podcasts. It was good to have this to listen to after the disappointing way the cancelled test match might have turned out. That was the fourth test between England and India. Burgee says, I listened to this in its entirety over my lunch break today. So he's one of us now, which is excellent to know. Demon says, could you maybe post the 11 up in the thread after every podcast? I get distracted once in a while on public transport and miss names here and there. And obviously I'm not going to make the effort to rewind. Well, thank you for that. Show of confidence. But Zorax goes and puts up a Dual Nation 11, which we picked in the last podcast. We'll do that this week as well. Demon also says that he thinks Luke Ronchi could have kept wicket for the Dual Nation 11, which is a fair shout.
Yeah, yes, I remember when he played for Australia in the West Indies in a few one days in 2008, and he probably regretted that because that probably delayed his chance to play for New Zealand because of that 5-year wait. But yeah, but he's done well to represent two nations.
Did he play for Australia before Brad Haddin?
No. Brad Haddin played his first one day for Australia. I think it was about 2000, 2001. He got occasional one dayers for Australia when sort of Gilchrist was resting, throughout most of the 2000s. I'd have to check that up. I probably will, but I think it probably surprises you that how early Brad Haddon made his debut.
So he was
check that.
So he was always coming in for Gilchrist after he retired.
Yes, I think I do. The only non-Haddon selection, I'm pretty sure Ryan Campbell got a one-day gig in about 2001, 2002, played one for Australia. So maybe for a while, at least at one-day level, he might have been considered for that. But I think it was always Brad Haddon. I think most of the others did have the batting talent. Maybe they were better keepers, because I don't think Brad Haddon was a particularly outstanding keeper, but maybe it was Chris Hartley. No, he might have been a bit early, but there was a few around at the time, but I think it was Brad Haddon. Yeah. Yes, and actually he made his debut, in January 2001 against Zimbabwe at Hobart. So he was around for a fair while before he got, the full gig.
Yeah. Ryan Campbell brings us nicely full circle as well, because we picked Ryan Campbell because he played for Hong Kong.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I didn't know that.
Because you didn't listen to the last podcast.
I was listening. I was listening to earlier ones.
No, it's all right. Yeah. You've been rumbled now. We know what's going on. I see how it is.
I was hoping to actually, because I actually thought this was going to be this time tomorrow, and I was going to catch up with the last couple. Because I was listening to one we were discussing India and New Zealand from one of the earlier ones. So just thought I'd go in chronological order, and I just one thing led to the other, and just busy times and watching cricket. I thought I was going to try and catch up, but I've been rumpled. I confess.
Have you been watching?
Never again.
Have you been watching the current series in India at all?
Nothing really of this match. I did watch the second and fourth tests. I watched pretty large chunks of, it's been. Go on.
Very similar games. England bat first. They're getting okay sort of total in the 3 and 4 tests. What would be a good total pretty much anywhere else in the world, except against India in India, where they're completely unruffled and they don't need to worry about facing their own spin attack, because England's are much less accurate and they give away some free runs every now and then. The seam bowlers get tired and they've got nothing to work with. They just happily pile up the runs and get a big lead anyway. We're at the end of day 2, and it looks like England might have gone just one step further and a bit more like the test in Rakjot, where they nearly won with a total of 477. But India are on a unbroken opening stand of 60 at the close of day on second day. So it's all looking a little bit familiar again. I don't think we'll be an innings victory for India. They're a long, long way away from that, and England have certainly got a chance, but it does look a bit familiar. They need to just take 20 wickets. They need to bowl India out tomorrow.
I sort of formed this, I think, watching from this series, but just the rule about probably winning in India, you've got to be ahead after the first innings. I mean, almost being level on runs is almost being behind, because then it's India's. You've got to make the play early. You've got to get at least a 100-run lead, probably 50-run lead at the minimum. It's just the way matches in India go. So you've got to basically be front runners. You can't, it's not like if you're 100 runs behind, you can't skittle. Let's say if you skittle and you're out for 150, well, realistically, the opposition isn't going to make that, because they're going to have probably better spinners and the batsmen aren't used to it. You've got to make the running, in the first innings. So actually, if India get, let's say, 500, then it's actually a bit of a worry for England, because then, that's almost like they're the only side that can lose, because they'll take to day 4. So they've got to just hope they can run through India tomorrow and, probably early on the 4th day and try and set up the game as they did in that first test. And that 4th test, you did say it was cancelled, but that was a classic example of, I'm not allowed to discuss that, am I presuming that, going by the 4th test? Because I did watch a bit of the latter stages of that.
You can opine on it, but whether or not I accept it really happened is up to you.
Well, it was actually really halfway through that test, England are probably in front. You just looked like they were going to get a first innings lead. And the great irony is, I know there was a big discussion about the drop catches, and normally you think, Kohli, that was the big one. He got a double 100, but the pivotal one was Yadav's drop. Was it Joe Root who dropped him with the new ball, because that partnership changed what probably was even money into an innings defeat, and because it says rarely get a number 9 to bat as well as he did. and that probably look, maybe India would have won, but it's just ironic when you think Kohli, they can't get any worse than that. But it was actually the number 9 who that partnership sort of defined the game. Yeah, so I'll leave that for discussion. I suppose you can discuss any broader topics on, and I've probably discussed previously Cook's future as captain, because I know there's been a bit of discussion about that.
There's no one else. He's got to. I mean, he's in the job as long as he wants, as far as I'm concerned. There's no way that he is a poor captain. It's not the case. You need to look at things that a captain does outside of one bad tour. And he has had plenty of fantastic tours as England captain, not least his very first series as England captain, where he won in India. Right? People talked about it going badly in 2013-14. Then he's out of all this pressure on his captaincy, all of it going wrong all the time. But the captain doesn't make fielders drop catches. The captain doesn't prevent spin bowlers from bowling a consistent line or length. It doesn't happen. And at the same time, unless you want to completely credit Cook and his captaincy with England winning in India in 2012 and in South Africa last winter, then don't blame him for this loss. And it seems to get that Alistair Cook, just because he's probably a less good batsman to watch than most captains that are out there at the moment, he is inherently a defensive, meek captain, and it's just a fallacy. Nobody gets blamed for losses in the way that Alistair Cook is currently getting blamed for losses. It's bizarre, and it seems to be mostly to do with him not having as good a cover drive as Virat Kohli, because Virat Kohli is an aggressive batsman, therefore he's an aggressive captain, even though we have mostly seen him be be quite reserved with the way that he's captaincy in the field, not in his character, but certainly in his strategies. And allowing his bowlers to do the work over a long period of time. England have faced a lot of overs in this. India's bowling has been fairly miserly most of the time. And players like Ashwin and Jadeja have been able to do what they do best, bowling consistently, waiting for the England batsman to make a mistake. But because Kohli is an aggressive batsman, he's got this mantle to seemingly do what he wants and have people praise his aggressive captaincy. But it's just this big fallacy.
What I've seen, I don't think even the TV commentators have been, he's not really been aggressive. They've actually been criticising Kohli for being quite defensive at times, I think with some justification that he sort of wasn't, he's quite conservative in how the fielders, when the spinners come on. I think actually just what I think with Cook, I think the issue, it's more personality. It's because I think Kohli, because he's a bit of a controversial, he's somebody, he's sort of, you keep watching, he keeps you watching whether you like him or hate him, I guess, but he's somebody who keeps people interested, whereas Cook's very, from a personality, was very straight down the line, and I think I've just got this maybe people resent that because he's a very sort of, not so much conservative, but he's sort of, maybe, I suppose that's the best word I can put of it, and I think people, sort of almost like a bit of a controversial, bit of a flashy character. Maybe he's, sort of, and maybe I think cricket fans like to have captains. They sort of like captains who seem to be, inventive and do things and like declare early. I wasn't online for the South Africa Australia series, but that Faf du Plessis, when he declared before the end of day one, before South Africa had been dismissed, commentators and fans love that sort of thing, even though
it doesn't actually help all that much.
No, it didn't. But I think they sort of love, especially Michael Clarke. People, even though personality-wise, they sort of, is divisive and such. As a captain, I loved it because even he do sort of, let's use a modern terminology, funky. He tries things and just this radical fielding position. And Cook, from what I've seen, and you probably can back this up, but he does it. He's pretty much, standard and, standard fields. Doesn't, try anything too radical. Just relies on, the good solid stand positions and his bowlers to deliver. And I think people, I think it's subconsciously. So people like to chip at him because he's not a flashy personality or he doesn't do radical things in the field. And So when he struggles, even though he has done some great achievements, I mean, God, imagine Australia if Cook, imagine if Smith led a winning Test side in India, he'd be given a ticker tape parade. But that, he sort of gets, picked on, I guess, for want of a better term. I mean, he's a tough character. I'm sure he doesn't really bother him that much, but I think that's the reason. It's a personality thing, because he probably, Kohler probably isn't any more aggressive a captain, but he's sort of a more vibrant personality.
More animated than anything else.
Yes.
One thing that we can't fault Kohler on is just how well he's come on as a batsman. Probably this time last year, there was a lot of bit of pushback against Kohler being overrated, because people put him up as one of the finest batsmen in the world, mainly based on his limited overs. There's no question about it now. He's landed in Test cricket, and he's just cranking out hundreds, big hundreds.
Well, I mean, that actually what I probably could argue, I know he got the double century, probably the most impressive batting this series was on that first Test, on that final evening. I mean, if it hadn't been for him, probably India might have lost, because England got pretty close. I don't know if they ever believed they could win, but they were 4 wickets to win, and he was the only one who really, the way he looked, I mean, I guess as a batter, he looked in control. It was almost like when he's out, India will get through, even though they actually probably looked a bit vulnerable. But he just had that, he sort of that ego, that personality. While I'm here, we're not going to lose this. We're going to be safe. And, and that was really impressive, because I know it was a bit patchy in New Zealand, as I recall. He got a century at the end, but that was a turning point, and he's had obviously a monster series against England. I mean, he's had in all formats. I saw his T20 against Australia in the World Cup. I mean, the great thing about him as a batsman, he wants to be in the centre when the game's on the line. I mean, you just can't buy that. That's more than all the talent in the world. He just wants to be there. He just can see it. When the pressure was on, when India were batting to save the game. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He wanted to be there and see it through. And that's so invaluable.
Yeah, you could say that he's been the difference between the two sides. I've seen that said before. I think there's a little bit more to it than that. Firstly, there's Ravichandran Ashwin, who's just unflappably consistent. England have had a couple of bowlers take a few wickets in this series. Adil Rashid has been taking a few wickets, but there's been an awful lot of dross in between as well. Ashwin didn't have a brilliant day today, but he's taken the middle order wickets quite consistently. Every time it's looked like they've got back on top, they've had to deal with somebody bowling completely consistently in conditions that are favourable over and over again. They haven't been able to get on top of him like they have in the past, and he's just been piling up more and more wickets as time goes by. The other thing that is currently the difference between the two sides is that England are bearing the hallmarks of a tour where they're just sort of clinging on in terms of their strategy. Like the initial strategy, the initial 11 that they came in with is completely different to the 11 that they've got at the moment, which has things like Moeen Ali batting at 4, even though he's done really well as a batsman in this Test match. Jos Buttler is playing as a specialist batsman at number 7. Not Richard Dawson. I'll try that one again.
There's a blast from the past.
Yeah, no, definitely not Richard Dawson. Liam Dawson is playing as a number 8 with completely undefined role. Throw your hands in the air. Well, maybe this guy will make a difference at some point. Kind of selection, which is just it's relatively rarely does that kind of a tour end well.
Yeah, actually, that reminded me, I did read after the 4th Test Nasser Hussain's comments on selection, and I don't think he was critical of the side and how they performed that much. It was more about the selection and planning, and I guess that's what you're alluding to. And I sort of agree, because what I said with England, I think they had the elements there to. Well, I think it's 3-0 to be 3-0 down. I think they've underachieved. I think they've had, sort of the individual parts, so to speak, to do better. But I think as a whole, it's just not worked because, and I think it's to do with selection and planning. Like you said, it's all been a bit all over the shop. And And I think, look at the bowling attack in the last test, and I was actually going to bring back Cook and his captaincy. On that third day, I think when Kohli and then Yadav and that part, just the way Cook used Rashid, because that's what I watched. I watched virtually the whole day of that, and he just seemed to bowl him far too long. And I think he got Jadeja's wicket when he tried to smack him, but I think that was almost the worst thing because Cook just kept bowling him, and there were three pacemen there, Chris Wokes, it just didn't bowl for almost the whole day, and it was just, I don't know, it was just something wrong in the thinking. It's unusual actually. You usually say, the side's not good enough because this and that selection isn't that crucial, is overstated as to why a side didn't do well. But I actually think I'm followed as close as you have and many others have, but I sort of think that selection has really let them down. Sort of planning, just thinking through what is the best side to win, because it was just, why Rashid, he was just treated as a stock bowler, and he sort of lost I just saw, you could tell he was just losing his way. He bowled really well early on that, I think it was the third day, but you could just tell before tea he was starting to lose his way but he kept bowling him, and then he kept bowling him after tea, and there was no lack of bowlers in the side, and it just, I think that's I look back, this was maybe a bit of a missed opportunity, because I think England, the elements were there to at least maybe even draw the series, let's say.
They could still win this test match. If they do it, it will be, I think, probably based around their seam bowling. They've kind of mashed together this tour with the previous two test matches in Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, the one time they looked like winning games was when they had Ben Stokes and Stuart Broad getting the ball to reverse and causing the batsmen problems that way. Rashid has picked up a few wickets, so has Moeen Ali from time to time, but not in a way that is genuinely getting on top of the batsmen. So I've said previously in the podcast they need to just keep going with their pace attack, but the pace attack has changed around so much. Anderson's been in and out of the side, so has Wokes, so has Broad. So they're struggling to put together a proper plan with the pace attack, and it's not come together.
Oh yeah, Stuart Broad, he bowled. Was it the second test? I think the second test he bowled really well. He bowled. I think I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he bowled. I'm trying to remember if it was the first or second test. He bowled in the series. He bowled exceptionally well, which he can. He's just been. That's what's he's. Like his overall record, test average when he finishes his career doesn't sound like what's the all-time greats, but he's been somebody who can bowl great spells. When he gets on, he can just bowl and just be relentless, and sometimes in unfavourable circumstances. And he just bowled, superbly. That's what I'm saying. He just think something. They've got a long gap till they play Test cricket next, and thinking about it, I guess maybe whether Cook. Probably, it's not saying this Cook's issue. Maybe they just needed, maybe the Bangladesh series that maybe confused things. It wasn't on here, so I didn't get to see it. But maybe they overcomplicated things from that series when they lost that second test. And because somebody like Stuart Broad, I almost think wasn't fit at times this series, but almost like he's a sort of bowler he can. That you could base winning a series around. Even in India, they maybe focus too much on the conditions and misuse their pacemen, and rely too much on their spin, which, as you've said, probably isn't their strength. But anyway, I guess it's a learning experience for next time, because it is quite a youthful side, or some very youthful players in it.
Several of the youthful players in it have ended up in a different place this series compared to where they started. I mentioned Moeen Ali, and we've put together an 11, or at least I think we have most of an 11, of that kind of player that ended up in a completely different role to what they started. So we've got the changing role 11, and in this I've got some of the players that have been playing in this game. So I've got Moeen Ali as a number 4, along with a couple of others. Moeen Ali hit 120 as a number 4 batsman on the opening day of this test match. It's his third 100 of the year. And for somebody who was based on being in the side as an off spinner, but I think number 8 for the first 2 years or so of the career, excluding his debut series where he came in for Ben Stokes as an all-rounder. He's kind of had to do everything. I think he batted at he opened the batting at one point when we were playing in the UAE, and I think he's had at least one innings for England at every position from 1 through 9.
Yeah, he's. I mean, I remember. Yeah, I think maybe they just haven't worked out how to use him as yet. I mean, it makes me think back to the 2015 Ashes, where I think the best partnership, I don't know if it was England or both sides had was Broad and Moeen Ali. I'm just trying to remember where he was batting, how low he was batting in that series. Where they just virtually every test in a low scoring series. I mean, there were some very low scores there, but they always seem to put on runs together. And he just usually, I mean, seems to do a contribution. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they've got too many all-rounders. I'm not sure. It's just, look, I think maybe, I know the scoreline will look bad, or 3-1 less so, but the potential is there that I think if they just sort things out, maybe make some tough decisions and say, no, they've got to use this so-and-so this one, instead of being a bit of licorice all sorts, which I get the sense they've been this series. I think they potentially be a very good side, and I think is it South Africa next summer and the English summer and then Australia. So, the potential is there. I mean, it's been a disappointing series, but, I mean, look, I mean, most sides are losing in India, and, I mean, I guess they haven't, it could have been 4-0 or 5-0. I mean, New Zealand got whitewashed, and, it's pretty, I mean, that's what I forget, India's pretty tough. They're number one in the world, and that's based virtually on that they're close to unbeatable at home the last couple of years. So, it's a tough assignment. So, maybe we shouldn't be asking too much. I mean, it just shows how well they did to win a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know what they would be doing, but they've got a long time between now and then. But like I said, we are going to move on now. We're going to have a look at the dual role 11, or changing role 11. Moeen Ali is in there as my number 4 because he's batted at number 4 in this match. What other middle order players can we put in?
Middle order. I had a couple of top order.
Okay.
So we're talking about sort of players who started at one thing. Are we talking about sort of
the way that I've done this is I've put like the thing that they ended up as what they are in the 11. So I've got,
so not sort of one off.
Yeah, so I've got top order players that started as bowlers and bowlers who started as batsmen and so on.
Yes, the things I probably the two I was thinking of bowlers who were tried as batsmen. I mean, I'll give the one probably it's not a middle order batsman, but he I'll say he's a middle order batsman. Like pretty much 90% of his career for Australia, but he was used. When he was used, he wasn't used as that when he played for Australia, Test level, and that's Cameron White.
Right, okay.
He was always talked about as being, sort of Nick Shane Warne and all that, but he never really got wickets. He was a batsman, and he's had a very good domestic career, and still may get back in the one-day side. But back in 2008, post Shane Warne and post Stuart MacGill, both leaving international cricket within about 12 months of each other. And Stuart MacGill's a bit unexpected for them. Happened midway through a tour, actually, of the West Indies. So for their tour of India in 2008, they were sort of lacking options. There weren't many backups, and they sort of went for Cameron White who played as their prime spinner for all 4 tests, and didn't get many wickets at all. I mean, he was basically playing a role he wasn't suited to, and he's he'd been batting at 8, and that was or even 9 when I think it was a night watch, and it was sort of a waste of his talents. And look, I'm not saying he was Test standard, but I mean he was somebody who was really always primarily a batsman, a top 6 batsman. He was a number 5 or 6 batsman, and he doesn't even bowl. He's hardly bowled at all for 5 or 6 years, basically. I mean, that just sums up where his bowling's at. But when he got his chance at Test level, he was treated as a bowler, and it didn't work, and Australia lost the series 2-0.
Yeah. When I was growing up, the Australian team were just borderline unbeatable. There were times when they lost. Obviously, they lost in 2001 in India, famously. They lost in 2005 in England. But for the majority of the early 2000s, they were never outplayed. Really, they were occasionally lost, but they never got badly beaten. And that 2008 series was probably the first series I remember where Australia were outclassed.
Yes, I would. Yeah, that's a very good point. See, those two series you referred to was just Australia were below their best and deserved to lose. But both series. I mean, if certain things occurred, they could have won both. But it was still a very tight series. Some very close Test matches. But at 2008, I remember that was sort of that was the beginning of. They're probably leading up to now where they've had that's. Struggles in India. They haven't won a Test in India since then, and they did look quite mediocre at times. They just, you just probably was a bit of a shock to one and all that used to Australia for 10 to 15 years, winning almost everywhere, pretty much everywhere, in pretty every series. That they looked so ordinary. And India, were pretty. Well, starting. That was the year where they sort of that was a transition from Kumble to Dhoni as captain, and it was actually it's a bit of an aside, but Dhoni, you could just tell he was ready to be captain. Kumble was pretty much on his last legs, and I think he was a bit sort of worn out by cricket, and Dhoni just looked to really. I mean, again, this is getting back to the captaincy issue, but he looked like you could just tell he lifted the side, and I think Ricky Ponting probably was starting to get ill-prepared. I mean, he'd been brought up in a decade of incredible success and dominance personally and team-wise, but the last few years of his career as captain or non-captain weren't quite the same.
Coming back to our selection, because we had to digress from it.
Sorry.
I had a very similar selection to Cameron White, and it's another young, blonde batsman who was originally picked to bat at number 8 and be a leg spinner.
So number 8, originally picked as a leg spinner.
Despite clearly being a batsman, and then later coming into his own as a batsman.
Stephen Smith?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. I mean, I sort of forget his bunch of tests he played in 2010 and 11. But he did show a bit with the bat. I remember that. He wasn't racking up the tons like he was now, but even... in the 3 Ashes tests he played, look, his bowling was, who cares really? It wasn't much note. England didn't have any problem with him, but as a batsman, I mean, he didn't really have big scores, but he showed a bit of. I remember in Melbourne when England won the Ashes that he was like the only shining light virtually in that second innings when Australia were obviously humiliating Test match. He showed us some. It's quite actually. I think he's quite a different batsman to who he is now. I think he's much looser and a bit sort of flashier. And he's very different to what he is now. He's sort of. I mean, he's not a conventional looking batsman, a great stylist, but he just seems to have developed a method where he just wherever the ball's pitched, he just seems to be perfectly placed. I mean, you could say he's sort of a bit of a distant cousin of Chanderpaul. He's sort of awkward and moves across and moving around, but when he has to play the ball, he just seems to be there, and he's currently averaging close to 60. Yeah, so it's a good one. Now this is one who started off as an opening batsman and finished off as a wicket-keeper who batted at, I think, 7 basically, and that's the Wayne Phillips, who played in the mid-'80s for Australia.
Okay.
And I think, he scored a century on debut, actually. I think he scored about 150 against Pakistan in 83-84, and I think, but his career, I mean, he scored a century in the West Indies in 84, and apparently he was a very aggressive and counter-attacking batsman, but after Rod Marsh retired, and originally we were going to use some Tasmanian keeper called Roger Woolley, but one thing led to the other. I think he sort of struggled a bit, and they went to Wayne Phillips. And initially did pretty well, and he toured England 85 and did decently, but I mean, he was never a greatest keeper, as I recall, just sort of functional, I guess, and he sort of lost form in 85, 86, and his career was over, just less than 3 years, and he for the talent he had, I mean, it was probably a bit of a waste. And really, if he'd maybe stayed as a batsman, maybe aggressive opening batsman, which he started off as, he could have had a much more successful career. But
through a period where Australia weren't exactly full to the bursting with top order batsmen in the days of Wood and Yallop and Hilditch and such.
Yes. I think what happened with him is I think he was a bit of a he was a bit of a I wouldn't say lair riser, but he was a bit of a jokey sort of. I think he was maybe a lair riser, because I think Bob Simpson came in about 86, and I think it's pretty much the case that he probably saw certain types like Greg Ritchie and Wayne Phillips as not being, that they were probably a bit non-serious. It wasn't like they weren't trying, but they probably weren't up to what he saw as professional standards, and he was one of the victims. And so his Test career finished in early '86.
Fair enough. What about people who moved the other way, moved to the top of the order?
I haven't got ones permanent. I've got one-offs.
Okay.
Unusual. We're put there deliberately. I've got probably one. This is a forgotten one. But do you remember the Australian off-spinner Peter Taylor?
I do not.
From the 80s. Okay, he came in as a shock selection in the 86-87 Ashes as an off-spinner. He was an off-spinner. He hardly played any Test matches, and people thought that actually they were Australia selected Mark Taylor, because there was. That's true. That's a famous story, and he had a great debut. And Australia won the dead rubber in Sydney that year. But they still lost the Ashes, and he never really kicked on as a off-spin bowler. He was a very good one-day bowler, but I guess specifically what I'm talking about, back in the Pakistan tour of 1988, Australia were skittled for about, actually I'll check it up now, the exact score, but they were skittled for about 120. Pakistan scored about 480. Judd Meendad got a double century, and so Australia followed on, and the only person to actually get any runs was Peter Taylor, who, and I'll check it up now. I'm going to bring up the scorecard now. Pakistan's got 469, and Australia got 165, and Peter Taylor was the top scorer easily, 54 not out, and they put him up to opener. And had Jeff Marsh and David Boone actually moved David Boone down from ahead of opener. He was brought up to open the innings in the second innings,
right,
which probably showed how desperate they were. But he was put in as opener, and he failed. He only made 2 runs, so that was the end of that experiment. But he was used as an opener for 1 innings when he was.
Okay, nice one. I've got 2 more openers, so I might put one of them at number 3 to make room for him. But firstly, one that I absolutely have to include is the return of Wilfred Rhodes to the Cricket Web 11, because he's done so many things that he ended up in all of our 11s in the past. If you don't know, Wilfred Rhodes was Yorkshire and England left-arm spinner in the so-called golden age of Test match cricket, which seems kind of silly now. But that was in the 1900s, before World War One. But throughout that decade, he started off as a number 11 and made his way slowly up the order and actually batted at every single position from 1 to 11 eventually.
Is he got the? I suppose I could check up on Wikipedia, but has he got the most first-class wickets ever?
Yeah, that's right. Because he played for Yorkshire for years and years and years, even after he was retired. When he was in his 40s, kept on playing season after season for Yorkshire. When they used to play against all 18 counties, so all the first-class records are from England players from sort of before the 1990s, when they split it into 2 divisions. And yeah, Rhodes just played for years and years in county cricket, and he was sort of the bowling equivalent of Jack Hobbs. But speaking of Jack Hobbs, he opened the batting with him for a long time as well. So he was everything. He was a left-arm spinner, he was an all-rounder, he was an opening batsman who barely bowled, he was a selector at one point between Test match appearances, which is quite good.
Yeah, so so many great names of English first-class cricket. In that, going back, probably to about, from the 19th and earlier 20th centuries. I'm sure they would. I think cricket historians would know a lot about. They're still cricket fans, but I mean, probably back in the day, I mean, when it was huge names. I mean, Dr. W.G. Grace. I mean, it wasn't, as far as I know, it wasn't his international career that was made him, a household name in England. It was his county career where I think he was considered to change the game. It was probably made it a popular sort of mass sport. I mean, that was the day back in county cricket. It didn't have to be international star. If you were a great county player, that made you, a revered figure.
Yeah, I imagine it was, a bit like, I suppose probably the closest equivalent would probably be the Premier League in soccer, where, it's kind of additional what happens in internationals. Like, if you can play in the Champions League and that, then you're a world-class player, and that was what county cricket used to be like.
Oh, yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah, it's just obviously changed now. Where it's almost, if you star at domestic level but don't do it international, it's almost, I guess, sort of like the Mark Ramprakash. It's almost looked down upon, even though he did do the great feat of 100 first-class hundreds. I think he and Graham Hick did both do that.
Yeah, it's not what that used to be, that award, is it? 100 first-class hundreds. When people like Geoffrey Boycott did it, it was because you had to play for your side and you had to play for England. And when Hick did it, it was because, well, the only reason he's got 100 first-class hundreds is because he hasn't been playing for England.
Yeah, it was now Australian batting coach. Yeah, I actually just remember that. And Ramprakash is the English batting coach, actually. So they might be, presumably they hold on to their position, they'll be up against each other in 12 months' time.
As they were for so many years for Worcestershire and for Surrey.
But he played for Ramprakash Middlesex. He switched.
Yeah, he was Middlesex.
Counties controversially a bit. I think it was
sort of. Yeah, he played for Middlesex when he played for England, and then after his Test career finished in about early 2000s, he moved to Surrey and made most of his reputation back as a player while playing for Surrey, I think.
Yeah, and he'd still. I mean, he was. I think it was come up in the previous time I was on. I don't think so, but in 2009 he was talked about as coming in for the final test, and it was Jonathan Trott instead. Yeah, so it was even that late. I mean, you think it's been 18 years since he started his international career, but he was still so good at domestic level that he was seriously considered.
I've got one more opener before we move on to the bowlers, who is Mark Richardson.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, then he had the yips. Is that right? Am I thinking that he had the yips as a spinner and he became an opener?
I have no idea why he changed from a spinner to an opener. I was hoping somebody could fill me in a little bit about this. But when you look for Mark Richardson on Cricket Archive, which I did do some actual research. When you look at Mark Richardson's early career, he is playing at number 10, number 11 as an off spinner.
Oh.
And sometimes players do get a bit of batting talent and make their way up the order, like a few people, like we've seen from a few others. But it's very rare that you go right from number 10 up to opening the batting, and without actually being a bowler at international level at all, seemingly with nothing in between.
Yeah, the most amazing thing about Mark Richardson, I remember seeing him play one-day cricket, which was, you think it's like the last thing. But I actually did in 2001, 2002, I think New Zealand and Australia, when New Zealand toured here. But, he was, I think, he'd be underrated, I think, his importance, because New Zealand, I haven't studied this, but they haven't had that many quality openers in the last 20, 30 years.
I don't think you'd get any argument that they've struggled to replace him.
Yeah. Well, I remember, and I think his last test was Australia 2004, 2005, 2 test series, and I think, Australia were, at the peak of their powers then. I think remember he read injuries, I think he just realised that was, he'd done. Yeah, it was a rapid end, actually. I think he was still doing pretty well in England in 2004. I think he scored at least 1 century, but I think that, when it ended, and I actually remember, I think his final act as international cricket was he had a race with Darren Lehman into the series to see who are the slowest 2 opposition players. I think he beat Lehman, as I recall.
moving to the bowling attack, I think this was harder because it seems to be the case that as you get more into cricket and you've played more matches, your batting generally improves, and batsmen tend to be a bit older than bowlers. And also, if you can bowl, you might want to give it up just because it's a bit more demanding. And if you can't bowl, then why would you take it up halfway through your career? So there's relatively few cases of batsmen turning into bowlers, but I've got a couple who's changed from all-rounders into bowlers, and that would probably be Anil Kumble, who batted at 5 or 6 in youth cricket, played for under-19s for India and in his first-class debut, generally batting above the keeper as a number 5 or a number 6, before turning into specialist leg spinner later on in his career. And another one is Stuart Broad, whose batting has just completely fallen off a cliff in the last 3 years or so. Stuart Broad actually started life as an opening batsman for Oakham School when in sort of schoolboy cricket, sort of 15, 16 years old. And I think probably what put a stop to that and made him take up bowling seriously was suddenly waking up one day and discovering he's 6'7".
Yeah, I mean, you look technique-wise, you can see that background. I mean, when he's on, he can be quite good. I don't know. I think he gets what I've seen over the years. He can get a bit maybe as he's just getting all psyched out by pace and just sort of sometimes, unless the match is really on the line, maybe you just get a bit frayed. I mean, I'm thinking back to 2013-14 Ashes. Sometimes you sort of I guess most English batsmen got intimidated by Mitchell Johnson, but
I got intimidated by Mitchell Johnson, and I was 15,000 miles away, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Actually, just to say, I think now I'm checking him up, but actually that reminded me. I was going to say something else, but I'm pretty sure was Ian Bishop start off as an opening batsman.
If that's true, he's in the 11 because I'm struggling for bowlers, so I'm going to say that that's true.
I just remember hearing that because I just remember during when he played as a Test cricketer that because he actually did have a decent technique. He never really did much as a Test batsman, but I remember Ian Chappell saying that or something. I remember because once he scored a couple of really good hook shots and against Australia in a Test match, and you think, he's. I remember Ian Chappell saying that he's got a really good. His technique is blah 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 because he came back he started off as a batsman, as a younger man, but I don't know. I'm just trying to check out quick info. I haven't seen any proof of that, but I have a vague memory of that, but that's unverified. And you're right. I mean, it is very true. I mean, who would from say midway through their career turn from a batsman into a pace bowler? Because it's like it's difficult. You have to be born a pace bowler, so to speak. So if you don't do it from a young man, you sort of you're not going to be doing it at all, really. I have got another one.
Go on.
Suggestion. I mean, it's not a pace and a bowl, but I think it fits in. Is Michael Bevan. Okay. Start off as a batsman, top 6 batsman, Test level, and his last few Tests he was played as one of the 4 bowlers. He played as I suppose a batting all rounder, but he played as a bowler. I don't know how well you remember the 94-95 Ashes, but he got sorted out pretty badly against England, and he sort of had, with an infamous how he played the short ball, and sort of plagued him throughout his career. And he actually is a bit like Ram Prakash and Hickey. He had an outstanding first-class record throughout his whole career.
Yeah, although the thing that he will always have is being a batsman in one-day cricket. So that kind of clouds the issue when people remember Bevan. But if you're just looking at red ball cricket, you can say, he did have this kind of path where he moved down the order, became more of a bowler, and then sort of left Test cricket for good, just to be a limited overs player.
Yeah, but I mean, what happened? He got dropped because about 3 or 4 times, and he got really he just got stuck on the crease. He just went a bowl short ball, and he just popped it up in the air, and he was dismissed. And that pretty much finished him off as a viable top 6 batsman. But then he got picked as a bowler. He took 10 wickets in a Test in 96-97 against West Indies. He had Bob Warne. They just didn't know how to play in the West Indies. And he was a fast left arm leg spin ball, but he was probably wrong and was his best delivery. And he went there and he played a few tests in South Africa in 96, 97. And I'll check that, but I'm sure he was played, I remember Paul Rifle missing out because Australia played basically him at 7. It was I guess he was played at 7 and Healy was at 8. That was the thing. But he was played as one of the 4 bowlers. So
all right.
Then he went to England and didn't do much. He actually had a terrible record against England. And he played one more test in January 98 against South Africa, where, again, he played as a bowler. Number 7, but he was one of the 4 bowlers. So Australia's attack would have been... It was quite a bold move to play him as a bowler, really, but it was Warne, Bevan, Rifle and McGrath, which it looks... obviously McGrath and Warne, but it's quite not much a thin attack. I mean, to have Bevan as a full bowler, but
Rifle
they tried him as that, and
Rifle himself, something of an all-rounder as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, he averaged over 25 with the bat at test level overall. I mean, he had actually quite an underrated cricketer, really. He had a very good record. And especially in that time, he was scoring 50s everywhere. But I think that what happened with Bevan, unfortunately, and I don't think it's been officially confirmed, I think he almost resented the fact that he wanted to be treated as a top 6 batsman. He didn't really want to be sort of an all-rounder playing as a bowler, one of the 4 bowlers, and that sort of led to his test career pretty much running out of steam. And even though he still racked up the runs at first-class level, he wasn't picked again. As you say, he had a very good a great one-day career. I mean, he was a great one-day batsman. But, just at test level, it never happened. But he did go from being a top 6 to playing as a bowler.
All right, so he's in. Our 11 is Mark Richardson, Wilfred Rhodes, Peter Taylor, Steve Smith, Moeen Ali, Cameron White, Michael Bevan, Wayne Phillips, Anil Kumble, Ian Bishop and Stuart Broad.
Oh, so we got through. Oh,
excellent.
Some tall bowlers there, a couple of very good. Bishop and Broad, that's can be a very imposing opening attack.
Yeah, it'll do. And you've always got some bowling from Steve Smith and Cameron White if you need a bit extra.
Yes.
We've got... So has Steve Smith been bowling in this match at all?
No, not so far.
No, he doesn't seem to bring himself on, does he?
He did in the South African series. He got a wicket, he got at least 1 wicket in Perth. When the South Africa in the Siggies were about 6 for 550. I mean, he came on, and after Nathan Lyon down at the best time, he actually did get a wicket. He bowls occasionally, but he's not. I think he's just he's just a bit like maybe David Warner, who was used to bowl a bit of leg spinners. Just you just when you concentrate on being a batsman, you just leave it behind. But he's probably handy in the odd occasion.
It doesn't look like they're going to need him in this Test match because, from what I can tell, this looks like an old-fashioned first Test of the tour Brisbane pasting that Pakistan are being handed out.
Well, actually, I'll not only that, it's an old-fashioned Pakistan in Australia first Test because I'm just trying to remember post-World Series cricket. I mean, presuming they lose this tomorrow, which looks very likely, I think there'll be 8 Test series are played in Australia, and they've lost the first Test of the series every time. I mean, I don't know how many, but it has been every time. You have to go back to the late 70s where they haven't lost the first Test of a series in Australia. I mean, and the thing is, it's always they do awful with the bat. That's what kills them. I mean, they scored, I think it was 129 in this innings, and the amazing thing is that actually that's not that bad by historically the opening Test in Australia. I mean, they got bowled out for 62 once in Perth in the 80s, and in 2004 they got bowled out for 76 when McGrath took about 8 for 20. I mean, they got bowled out last time they played in Brisbane, which was in the mid-90s. They got bowled out for 90. Warne took 7 for 20. I mean, it is quite startling how bad they start off Test series in Australia with a bat. I mean, it's even in India. You think India would have similar problems, but generally they've never been quite as bad as Pakistan have, and I'm not sure why, but they just seem to really not handle pace and bounce.
Maybe playing in so much in the UAE has actually sort of made that worse for them because they've built this batting order which has been fantastic in the UAE, and has done well very well in London as well. Actually, when England managed to produce some pretty slow pitches as well, but playing in Asia so much, and a lot of their away tours have been to Sri Lanka in the last few years as well, which have been playing very similarly. So maybe they're even less prepared for it than they normally would be playing at home.
Yeah, that'll be a fact. I mean, it's been a long time since they've toured Australia. It's been seven years, so aren't many in this side who toured here before. I think about 3 or 4 players.
So Eunice Khan will have
that, and they looked. I saw the thing was also I looked at the Pakistan West Indies series. I watched a bit of that, and they looked a bit tired at times, a bit flat, and I just have this theory where that drawing in England and getting the number 1 test spot, without playing at home, having to play, neutral venues and, sort of how tough that is. It was almost, I just wonder under the sort of Misbah or Haka, and especially after what happened in England 2010, the match fixing, the spot fixing, all that, to come back from that for the next 5 to do what they've done has been really remarkable. But I think it's taken such effort that maybe that was sort of the summit that they'd done it against the odds to, be number 1 test side. And I think you've seen since then where they weren't, against West Indies, who are usually hopeless away from home, they almost lost 1 test match and then lost the 3rd one. And then in New Zealand, I didn't see that much of that, but they, 2-0 loss. And so I just think they've run out of gas a bit mentally. Maybe I'd be surprised if Misbah goes on after this. Look, I'm presuming. There's still it's only still 2 more tests, but the way they batted yesterday, they just went up to it. I mean, they just got night cricket and all that. The pitch was fast and bouncy, but it wasn't like it was swinging around corners or it wasn't uneven bounce. It was just fast. A good bouncing pitch, and Australia bowling well, but they just couldn't handle it. They just mentally gave in, and that's where the damage was done in this match.
It looks like the first innings was a pretty good contest. Australia came out of it with the upper hand because they made 400, but they needed their best batsman, Steve Smith, and their in-form batsman, who appears to be Peter Hanscom, who's been picked at the right time to put on that big partnership. Because outside of that, there wasn't a lot going well for Australia, because Mohamed Amir's looks pretty decent. Wahab Riaz has got his pace up. It looked like it was a pretty good contest in the first innings, and then the second innings came along and game over. That was the big partnership, I guess. I think Smith was missed just before tea on the first day. I think it was actually up the part-time league. Was it the Azhar Ali? Is he the one who's bowls? Bowls part-time.
Leg spin, and and he I saw him just to bring up the scorecard today. I saw him bowl today, and to be honest, he was giving Usman Khawaja more trouble than Yasir Shah was. He couldn't. His wrong arm was really. Usman Khawaja couldn't read it at all, and he was. So I'm almost think he's a bit under bowled, to be honest. But so there's a few missed chances, and I think actually the last wicket partnership, I think they had 49, Jackson Bird and Nathan Lyon. That was not only was that sort of Pakistan lost momentum because they sort of run through the lower order, but it ensured Pakistan were bowling in the sort of when the sun was setting at night, when it's the pitch felt a bit fast, was skidding on and exposed them pretty badly. So but I mean the story for me is the batting. I mean, no matter how well they bowl, if they bowl at 300, 250, if you bat like they did on that second evening, they just didn't look up to it. I mean, they fought harder tonight. They did better today in the final evening, but I guess the damage has been done. And sort of the most damning thing about that first innings was that probably the batsman who looked the most secure with the bat was Mohamed Amir. He actually batted really well. He actually looked a good defence compared to some of his colleagues. I mean, Misbah ul Haq looked horrendously out of form. He hung around a little while, but he was just reaching for the ball, and it was almost like he was looking to edge the ball. He was sort of not confident. Maybe he was one who's maybe, at his age at 42 and, to probably not easy to go on pacing pitches. There aren't too many 40-year-olds of any kind who've played in Australian Test matches in the last few decades. I think the only one is Graham Gooch in 94, 95. And, it's just a bit, maybe it's a bridge or two or too far for him, especially in a fast pitch. We'll see how he does tomorrow. But he and Yunus Khan haven't looked that good so far. Yunus Khan, Golden Duck last night, and I don't know if you've seen the highlights, but it was, I suppose, good bowling. But the way he played it, it was like he had his was it a Hazelwood, and he had his bat behind his pad. It was just like, I think, almost unsure, But it was also like it was either going to hit the pad or hit the edge of his bat. It was sort of hidden behind his pad. It was just the tentativeness.
Yeah.
And he's had a few outs recently, also, so there's that. But even tonight, Hazelwood was beating his outside edge and his inside edge, and he was lucky to survive. Maybe it'd be different in the daylight tomorrow, but I'd be amazed if they lasted to stumps tomorrow. They fought hard, and Azhar Ali, he batted well. He hit some beautiful boundaries towards the end of the day. He hit Jackson Bird for 3 boundaries and an over. Really lovely drives, and they probably did well. 2 wickets. So that's 2% of 33, and they fought hard. But I just think it's the common Pakistan issue that just can't seem to handle Australian conditions well enough. It just pace and bounce does them every time.
Are you going to take your player of the week from the Brisbane Test?
I would give it to Peter Handscomb. Just for somebody, just the way he's batted, he just automatically looks like. I didn't see much of this innings, but I saw a fair bit of his Adelaide innings and his debut, and he just looks like he belongs at Test level. And you see somebody like Nick Maddison who can't buy a run. I shouldn't take that for granted. And to bat, like I said, it's a quality attack. And he's played against 2 good attacks, and he's already scoring runs. That's probably been maybe the most significant event of the summer. Him scoring a half century and century in debut, and I'll give it to Peter Handscomb just for his, let's say, belonging at Test level straight away.
The player who probably reminds me the most of, from the little bit of highlights and things that I've seen so far, is probably Phil Hughes, because he's not conventional. He's not very orthodox. He seems to be relying quite a lot on his back foot shots and trying to manoeuvre the ball in quite an unorthodox way. He doesn't play very straight, but what he does have is a great deal of batsmanship. He just looks like he plays like a batsman. He constructs his innings.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you describe batsmanship. He just, the modern way. It's not, the old cliche. Well, he doesn't play by the textbook. Well, I don't think anybody takes notice of the old, how to bat textbooks. I think it's, moved beyond that decades ago. And it's Phil Hughes. Yeah, it's interesting. Phil Hughes, he was such a unique batsman. I guess. The thing about Peter Handscomb stands. Have you ever seen a batsman bat so deep in his crease, facing pace? I don't think I've ever seen any batsman bat so. You just think he's going to hit wicket every ball. Well, yes, but I think like Phil Hughes when he was, I guess. He was maligned when he failed, but he had some great highs. Obviously in South Africa when he got 2 centuries in a Test, and he could, the flashy way he batted, and just, he was speaking. We've had a bit of a theme. He dominated at first class level during his career, and it wasn't, didn't get the chance. Was sort of intermittent Test level. But, unconventional. I think people are gradually adjusting, as long as it works, you bat your own way. Actually, just coincidentally, I was listening to an interview of Damien Martin, that we did a podcast, and Damien Martin did a lengthy interview. It was quite interesting because he was somebody who kept private. He was just talking about how different it was back in the 90s, how, if you went expansive and hit the ball out of the nets, Bob seemed to say, well, you can't do that again. You've got to bat the proper way. I think just in the last 15 years especially, the mindset of how people technique and what works and what doesn't. And just like the reverse sweep, which was considered a bit of a joke for a long time. Now that's a standard play. That's you really should have the reverse sweep. It's a great way to break up the field and get easy boundaries. I mean, I think we're maybe, I would say we were just sort of maybe a sort of own revolution, having a revolution in how people bat. They're sort of been broken away from the constrictions of convention that, and people like, Phil Hughes is probably one and Peter Hanscom is another, just the way he batted. I remember in that Adelaide test, the way he just late cut virtually off the stumps, Vernon Philander. It was like through third man. I was like, what's he doing? But it was actually really successful. He really knew what he was doing. It was actually, it was enormously risky. But maybe I'm just thinking, he's just batting, to his intuition. He can do that. And I just think, it's like the way he's been a sort of breath of fresh air in terms, and actually playing spin well. I mean, there have been so many Australian batsmen have been, they'll do well in India. Hasn't been
that's a very recent years. That's a statement that I would not make with a great deal of confidence.
Well, wait and see. I guess you have hope.
Yeah.
Whereas there might be a few other batsmen in the side and you think, we'll see about Usman Khawaja, but anyway, they'll be after his Sri Lanka efforts, but we'll see.
My play of the week is much shorter.
Sorry.
And that's because I haven't seen this, but like I've said before, you don't actually need to watch cricket to understand cricket, and mine is the innings played by Shania Lee Svat. Do you know about this?
Oh, is that scorecard? Are we talking about the astonishing scorecard? Am I right in thinking that? Where there's one standout?
Yeah, so this is Mpumalanga under-19 women's side against Eastern's under-19 women's side from a 2020 game. And I'm just going to read out the scorecard because it's just mental. Swanepoel run out for 0. Swart, the player I was talking about, 160 not out from 86 balls. Van Runsberg 0.
Decent pace.
De Vos 0. Velelo 0. Vos 0. Malaza 0. Nadies 0. Tlu 0. And Firi 0. So 160 runs, the rest of the side got 0.
So was that in the one day at T20? What format was that?
2020 innings. So she's facing 86 balls out of 120, and no one else is scoring any runs. At one point, an opposition bowler took a hat trick, but for the most part, it's players facing single-figure balls, which must be cumulative 1 or 2 and over, because this player is taking as much of the strike as possible and scoring at nearly 2 runs a ball while she does it.
Yeah, I mean, that the more you think of it, the more amazing that scorecard is. Obviously, it's an amazing effort to do the score 100 in any T20 game, but you think, somebody's scoring that much, you think. I mean, all right, you wouldn't think maybe some of the other side, the other batsmen might not score that many, but you think they'd last a few deliveries. I mean, it's amazing that they couldn't last 2 or 3 deliveries. You think you'd just block it out, or just get a single, So it's amazing that somebody scores that much, and then that's just people getting dismissed at the other end. Yeah, it would have been a heck of a match to see. I have been. That is. I think you won't see that too often.
I mean, under 19's regional one-day women's games in South Africa, unlikely to have been many people who actually saw it. It's probably the 2 teams, their mates and families, and the scorer, who can honestly say that they were probably there, and it would have been a good day out. I'd say that much. Apparently, the same player who scored the 160 also took 2 wickets in the second innings.
So, do you think they were in the 100-man woman of the match?
I think they probably nabbed it.
Good. Yeah, I think she might have just squeaked in, but.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of the CricketWeb podcast. You can join the conversation at facebook.com/cricketweb or twitter.com/cricketwebnet. Or better yet, come and get to know us at cricketweb.net/forum. We thank SoundCloud for hosting us at soundcloud.com/cricketweb and Jonathan Coulton for the music you are hearing right now. We hope to see you next time, and goodbye.
Goodbye.